2nd of September 2024, and according to my phone it is 10:30, which is synced to rugby and beyond. I know the county council clock has its own mind some days, so I always rely on my phone to give me an accurate time. Before the meeting's commenced, we've had the fire alarm checked, so if you hear a fire alarm during the meeting, please exit to the rear of me and congregate in the front car park, where we'll hopefully account for everybody. Not expecting a fire, of course. Refreshments in the ground floor are water at the rear of the room should anybody need it. Otherwise, I'm going to move on rapidly to item 1, apologies replacement members. Andrew.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. We have apologies from Vice Chairman Councillor Vernon, Councillor Ashton, Councillor Ashley Morris, Councillor Hall and Councillor Sear. I have no recorded apologies. Thank you.
Thank you. And on the basis of introducing Andrew, Andrew is our new committee clerk. I've known him for quite some time. He has performed excellently in another authority, and I'm sure he's going to do us credit here. So we'll move on from there. Item 2 is declarations of members' interests. Anybody wish to declare anything? Obviously, you can do at any stage. No? Okay. Moving on to item 3 then, minutes of the previous meeting, planning and regs 15th of July, previously circulated. I'm quite happy to move them. Councillor Skinner? Seconded by Councillor Skinner. All in favour, please show. That is unanimous, thank you. So without further ado, we'll move on to traffic items, and item 4, 4.1 is the proposed prohibition of motor vehicles, Allington, Sedgebrook, Skillington and Woolsthorpe by Beaver, Souston Lane and the Drift. So Jan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Councillor Fleetwood. I'm Jan Gibson, the Programme Leader for Traffic. I'm joined today by Andrew Fletcher, who is our Public Rights of Way and Access Manager, and he'll be able to answer any further questions that the committee wish to raise on this matter. So this report considers objections we've received to a proposed prohibition of motor vehicles along sections of an ancient droving road, now used as part of the Viking Way. Next slide, please. So there are 4 sections in total, so the 2 here either side of the A52 to the west of Allington and Sedgebrook. Next slide, please. And further sections to the west of Skillington. So as detailed in the evaluation report in Appendix D, the condition of these routes has deteriorated significantly as a result of use by motor vehicles. Next slide, please. It shows some of the damage that has resulted from use by motor vehicles. And the next slide is some extracts from an online video shared on social media. We do have an extract from the video to show you. The sound has been muted, however, on account of the bad language used by the driver of the vehicle. Thank you, Thomas. So we've received a large number of objections to this proposal, and these are summarised in Appendix C. The main issues raised are that it is not motor vehicles that are responsible for the damage, it will be agricultural vehicles. There are concerns that the scheme will discriminate against those wishing to drive or motorcycle along these routes. Alternative solutions have not been considered, and the process by which the traffic regulation order has been managed is not in line with legislation and has not been robust enough. I think the evaluation report provides clear evidence of the damage caused by motor vehicles. The council has received many complaints about the condition of these highways, as well as the other issues associated with motor vehicle use as listed in this report. Other options have been considered, but to manage the deterioration of the highways, but it's clear that these will not solve the ongoing destruction. The TRO has been processed in line with the Local Authorities Traffic Orders Regulations 1996, and the proposal was advertised twice to enable the public to respond. In conclusion, the approval of the restrictions as proposed will enable a programme of repair and refurbishment to take place, restoring access to the Viking Way for non-motorised users and promoting a regeneration of the environment and the benefits that this would bring. It's therefore recommended in the report that the objections are overruled so that this scheme can be introduced. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. In our midst we have Councillor Whittington as a visiting member. I believe you'd like to address the committee.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Chairman, for allowing me to speak as a local member. This issue was first raised with me about 4 or 5 years ago via local landowners and also Allington parish councils, and I actually saw in that video the state of the road there. On a side visit, my very first side visit about 4 years ago, I was out with a local landowner who's actually sitting up in the public diary this morning. As we were walking down, the condition was that bad that I stepped into a puddle that was bottomless and ended up by going up to my knees and then toppling over forward, ended up completely covered in mud. The state of that section of the Viking Way is truly horrendous. And this is an historic droving route, goes back thousands of years. Better known as the Viking Way, stretches all the way from the Humber down into Rutland. And these particular sections, obviously, the pass through via Allington, Sedgebrook, Walsall by Beaver are in the division I represent. But also the section at Skillington. I was born and brought up in Skillington. I can remember that section of the Viking Way when I was a boy, and it was perfectly passable. The current state of the Viking Way out at Allington, Sedgebrook, Walsall, it cannot be used by walkers, cyclists, people on horseback as it's intended to be done. It is in places. We saw some photographs there. I've seen sections that are considerably worse than that. It is impassable, and it is unusable. In terms of the objections that have been received, well, certainly I've been speaking over the last 4 or 5 years to local residents in Allington and Sedgebrook. I'm not sure where these objections have come from, because virtually everybody I've spoken to in the villages, and I've been to Allington Parish Council, Sedgebrook Parish Council, on occasions of both parish councils, there's been a number of local residents there expressing their concerns about the condition of the Viking Way, and I have never heard anybody objecting to potentially downgrading that section to stop motorised vehicles for actually using it. There are safety provisions in there, I believe, for local landowners will still be able to access their land if they require. They're all happy about it. So I really can't understand. I can't say where these objections have come from, but based on the decisions I've had, I don't think they've probably necessarily come from the Allington and Sedgebrook area. They may have come from further afield. I would just really just come here to sort of represent the views of the local residents who want to be able to access this section of Viking Way again, and reuse it for access purposes and for social purposes, and at the moment they can't. And also, we do have people who do walk these long distance footpaths, and if you were doing the Viking way all the way from the Humber to Rutland or the other way, you would find it really difficult on these sections to actually successfully navigate them. So I just would really just urge the members of the committee to support the recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly many moons ago, I think the County Council did do a visit. I'm trying to think. It's a long way in the distant past, and the conditions were very, very bad. But the video today we've seen illustrates it being even worse than on that occasion. I'm quite happy to move the recommendation as printed. I do believe that for the local people, it does need to be supported. I don't know, we have a highways officer here. Would you like to contribute anything to this item?
Thank you, Chairman. The only thing I can really say is it's all in the report, and as is, it's the level of sustainable use that is particularly aiming for the softer parts, the muddier parts of the track, which makes it worse and worse and makes it particularly difficult to maintain that type of use sustainably in the future.
Thank you for your comments. In view of the fact you're in the meeting, I thought I'd introduce you just to get another opinion effectively. But it is common with the thread we've heard so far. So I am quite happy to move the recommendation. Councillor Carrington.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, Jan, for an unusual and really quite remarkable presentation. The video said it all, and I was watching that, having read the comments of the various people who've objected, saying that there is no proof that motor vehicles are causing this damage. Well, users have provided us with exactly that proof of motor vehicles doing just that. There's a context here, which is that we are incredibly lucky in Lincolnshire to have Lincolnshire all around us. It's one of the biggest counties in the country. It has huge stretches of very important rural countryside and a tremendous network of footways, this being one, of course, of national significance with the Viking Way and historic significance because it is a very ancient drove road indeed. I'm afraid this is not a unique problem. I can think of a section of Bridle Way, which is actually part of an old Roman road, more close to my ends, which has a very similar problem with recreational vehicular use causing enormous damage. And we all want access to the countryside. But what we seem to have here is a situation where some people's access is denying access to others. And we have to find a balance through that. And I've read all the comments which the objectors have put in. Perhaps, as we've heard, these are not local people. Nevertheless, I take them very seriously. But where one person's access is making that impossible to use, and I'm a walker myself, and you've got metre-deep ruts, you just cannot get, and a sea of mud, you cannot get through it. And I'm sure the people who take their recreational RVs down there have a great deal of fun, but what they're basically making is a situation where it's impossible for other people to use it. There is a balance that we have to find here. And I find in favour of, I think, those who would be the majority of people using it, who would be local people, people using the national footpath, people on foot, people on horseback, for example. And we do have protection built into this for rural access. So the rural economy, people with a real reason to go there, be they farmers or woodland maintenance or whatever it might be, will be able to access it. So, Chairman, in defence of the majority and in defence of our wonderful countryside, I'm very happy to second this. And again, I thank you for a very forceful presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. As Councillor Carrington did, I read through every comment that was made, and the one thing that did struck me, and I do have an element of sympathy with, is yes, it's clear motor vehicles have done that damage, but as one of the objectors said, it is very unlikely that's been done by a motorcycle because of its weight. I don't know, Jan, within the provision of the legislation, if there is a means of allowing access for two-wheeled vehicles or a weight limit so that they could access but not allowing 4x4s and heavier vehicles to access other than farm vehicles when they need to, because that's clearly what's done the damage. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, we can tailor orders to accommodate different types of vehicle.
Of course, the real difficulty then comes with enforcement, and I think this droveway crosses the border of Lincolnshire into Leicestershire, if I'm correct, and to Rutland. So the net result would become quite an interesting issue to try and resolve. My preference is still to continue with the recommendation as printed. Councillor Pepper.
Thank you, Chairman. You referred to a site visit. I indeed remember that site visit back in 2014, and I think it was between Hilltop Farm and Saltby Airfield. So clearly it's been an ongoing problem for a long time, which is clearly getting worse as time goes on. I mean, this ancient drove road, which it deserves better than what it's presently getting and needs preserving. And that, in my opinion, includes the top surface layer too, and I fully support the application.
Okay, so I see nothing to refer back to Jan with on this one, so I'm going to put it to the vote. Proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Carrington, as printed. All in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Obviously, I see no movement, so that is definitely carried without issue. 4.2, Spalding, Little London, proposed bus stop clearway, pages 71 forwards. Jan, the floor is yours again.
Thank you, Chairman. So this report considers objections to a bus stop clearway. Next slide, please. So Little London is a B-class road linking Spalding to the A1175 to the south. The location of the clearway is shown in Appendix A and aims to protect the bus stop by restricting stopping and waiting by other vehicles visiting nearby businesses. One objection has been received, saying that the existing bus stop marking is disregarded and therefore formalising it will not make any difference. The proposal will also restrict parking for residents and their visitors. We believe that formalising the bus stop will deter parking within it and enable us to enforce as required. So the buses providing this regular service will be able to access the raised curbs provided for the benefit of vulnerable passengers and traffic flow. It's therefore recommended that the objection is overruled so that we can introduce the clearway. Thank you.
The report clearly says the first line background following concerns raised by the local member. So the local member is supportive of this scheme. On that basis, I'm quite happy to propose the recommendation as printed. Councillor Smith?
Quite happy to second, Chairman.
Do I have any speakers? Okay, proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Smith. All in favour, please show now. Unanimous, but I will say anybody against, any abstentions? Seeing none, therefore that is clearly carried. So we therefore move on to 4.3 Old Leek Church Road. Proposed waiting restrictions. Jan, please.
Thank you. So this report considers a number of restrictions we're proposing at Old Leek on Church Road. Next slide, please. There are two schools and the associated parking for them results in obstruction to traffic flow and visibility at junctions for pedestrians and drivers. The existing school keep clear markings and bus stops are routinely ignored and parked in. So as proposed on Appendix A, we have mandatory school keep clear markings, bus stop clearways and additional waiting restrictions as shown. We've received 7 objections. The main concern is the extent of the restrictions on Meadow Way. It's felt that these should go further and incorporate the junction into the co-op. Also, not restricting parking on both sides of Church Lane will result in continued overrunning of the pavement by vehicles. And the health centre at the end of Meadow Way is concerned that displaced parking will find its way onto Meadow Way and possibly into their private car park, making it difficult for patients to access the health centre. So the restrictions we're proposing aim to manage parking but allow it to continue where it's safe to do so. This improves visibility and maintains traffic flow and minimises the chances of displacement. We've noted the concerns raised about Meadow Way and we'll be happy to review the situation here in due course should this be required. It's therefore recommended in the report that the objections are overruled so that the scheme, as shown in Appendix A, can be introduced. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, the first line of the report says concerns have been raised by residents via the local member, and the local member is here. So, Councillor Skinner, would you like to comment?
I'm very grateful for the work that's gone into this. Very clearly, the parking down Meadow Way up to the health centre is problematic now, and the parish council are also supportive of this scheme, but we do feel that we may have to look at Meadow Way. To a certain extent, they've asked LHP, who own the Meadows home, so the doctors and nurses can park over the other side to alleviate some of the parking on the road. It could be that we have to have another look at this, but I think it's as all other secondary schools in the whole of Lincolnshire, that there is a problem when it comes to markings on the road, and people have this feeling that they don't always have to comply. And I think, first of all, we have to have the markings in. The relationship further up the road with the parking around the primary school, we may have to look at that again as well. But I think this is an excellent start, and I'm very supportive. And in that view, I propose to move it. Thank you.
So, on the basis the local member is willing to support it, and we do have a variety of schools here, and we do know what parking outside of schools is like. I'm quite happy to second this report. It seems that it is long overdue. I think probably, am I putting a little bit too strongly? No, I think Councillor Skinner's agreeing with me. So I think it's a good situation to work from. So I see nobody else wishing to speak. Proposed by Councillor Skinner, seconded by myself. All in favour, please show. That again is unanimous, but I will say anybody against, any abstentions, clearly carried, not a problem. 4.4, Great Gonaby, Marrett's Lane, proposed no waiting at any time. Jan, please.
Thank you. So this report relates to objections to an extension to waiting restrictions in Marrett's Lane to reduce the incidence of vehicles overrunning a footway in order to pass parked vehicles on the carriageway. Next slide, please. So Plan 1 on this slide indicates the original extent of the proposed double yellow lines in blue, and we've received 2 objections to those. Concerns that the restrictions will impact further on the already limited availability of on-street parking here, and that there is in fact no safety issue associated with current parking situation. Monitoring of this area has confirmed that the footway is overrun, but a slight reduction in the extent of the restriction may be accommodated. So it's therefore recommended that the committee overrules the objections, but that it approves a minor modification to the proposals to reduce the restrictions slightly as shown in Plan 2. Thank you.
So again, the report starts off a request that's been received by the from the local member. So we do have that support there, and with the suggestion of the minor modification, I am quite happy to support the application as it stands. I can see Jan's pulling a slight face. Are you happy with that? You're happy with that? Excellent. Councillor Skinner.
Very happy to second it, Chairman.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Right, proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Skinner. All in favour? Unanimous. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Seeing none, clearly carried. 4.5 Spalding, Bridge Street, proposed puffin crossing facility. Jan, please.
Thank you. So this is consideration of a puffin crossing on Bridge Street at Spalding. Next slide, please. A pedestrian crossing survey has been completed at the existing informal crossing point across Bridge Street at this point. It links the town centre via Church Street to all the residential area to the east of the River Welland. In accordance with the pedestrian crossing policy, the survey score justifies the installation of a zebra crossing at this point. However, as detailed in the report, this will not be feasible given its close proximity to the traffic signal installation which manages one-way traffic flow over the bridge. So the recommendation in this report is that members exercise their discretion in this matter to approve the submission of a funding bid for a puffin crossing at the site indicated in Appendix A, owing to the constraints associated with a zebra at this location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So yes, I think we take into account the positioning of this and the relationship between a zebra and a puffin. So I accept that a puffin is potentially the best way forward at this point. I'm quite happy to propose it. So can I have a seconder, please? Oh, I've got 3 seconders, so which one shall I take? God, I'm overrun. Andrew, which one would you like as a seconder? Which one have you written down?
Chairman, if I can assist, one of those is a Spalding member, so just a thought.
There we go, Spalding member. Yeah. Councillor Hassan, there we go, Spalding member. Thank you for that. We'll give the benefit of everything there. Thank you, Councillor Pepper. So proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Hassan. All in favour, please show. I think that one's going to go yes. That's very clearly a full majority. Anybody against? Any abstentions? No, that one was given. 4.6 North Icombe, Grace Avenue, proposed revocation of waiting restrictions. Jan, please.
Thank you. So this proposal at Grace Avenue involves the revocation of existing waiting restrictions. Next slide, please. Grace Avenue is a cul-de-sac off Station Road and formerly provided access to a large factory site, which now accommodates housing, which is accessed via an alternative route off Station Road. The current part-time restrictions shown in green at one time ensured unobstructed access to the factory site, but now are no longer required. So it is proposed to revoke these, but also to install some 24-hour restrictions around the junction of Grace Avenue with Station Road to improve visibility and safety here. We've received one objection concerned that removing the restrictions will attract parking by residents on Station Road, resulting in obstruction of driveways and for emergency vehicles. The emergency services raised no concerns with these proposals, and it is the officer's view that where parking may be accommodated on the highway safely, it should not be restricted from doing so. It is therefore recommended in the report that the objection is overruled so that the scheme may be introduced. Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly over a period of time, over the last, let's say 50 years, this location has changed quite dramatically with some of the factories being demolished and converted into housing, etc. So I can see the need to change conditions with regard to waiting restrictions, etc. in certain locations. I'm quite happy to move this and support it. Have I got a seconder, please? Councillor Smith, thank you. Would anybody like to speak to the application? Okay. Proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Smith. All in favour, please show. Unanimous. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Seeing none. Clearly carried as it's printed. 4.7 Tongue End, counter drain drove, proposed 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Jan, please.
Thank you. So the proposal is for a 30-mile-an-hour limit. Next slide, please. So following a request for a reduction in the speed limit through this built-up area, currently subject to national speed limit, conditions were assessed against the speed limit policy. And in terms of development density, the area falls short of that required in the policy for a limit to be introduced, but it does lie within 20% of the threshold and therefore may be considered a borderline case in that respect. So the mean speed has been established at 36 miles per hour. So the criteria again are met for a borderline case in terms of the level of limit. This being the case, the committee may approve a 30-mile-an-hour limit as shown in Appendix A, or alternatively recommend a 40-mile-an-hour limit if this is deemed appropriate. Thank you.
Again, the report starts off following requests from residents and the local member. So again, we have local member support. Quite happy to move this report as it stands. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Pepper, thank you very much. Anybody wishing to speak? Okay, proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Pepper. All in favour, please show. Unanimous. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Seeing none, clearly carried. 4.8 is Bracebridge Heath, St John's Road, proposed waiting restrictions and bus stop clearways. Jan, please.
Thank you. So we're proposing a variety of waiting restrictions, bus stop clearways at St John's Road in Bracebridge Heath. Next slide, please. Concerns have been raised locally about on-street parking, resulting in obstruction to buses accessing bus stops and to the flow of traffic, which at peak times can back up onto the A607, presenting a hazard to other road users. So as shown in Appendix A, we're proposing both full-time and part-time restrictions on St John's Road to manage parking, along with bus stop clearways to enable the buses to access the curbs to allow passengers to get on and off the buses safely. We've received 3 objections. Residents are concerned about the loss of on-street parking adjacent to their properties, and residents in surrounding areas are concerned about the possible displacement of parking into their streets. The proposed scheme seeks to maintain traffic flow and reduce the incidence of obstruction on the A607. The regular bus route is well subscribed and buses often wait for some time while large numbers of school children and other passengers alight or aboard the vehicle. Very little on-street parking takes place in the surrounding streets currently, and therefore it is not anticipated that the small number of vehicles displaced by this scheme will cause issues in those streets. It's therefore recommended that the objections are overruled so we can introduce the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. I do know this location, curiously enough, and that comes because of closures of the bypass, the western bypass, and having to make a cut through on a couple of occasions. And I believe I did use St John's Road to cut through between the 607 to get across to the Lincoln Eastern bypass. And obviously this rat run will disappear, hopefully when we have the new bypass constructed in a couple of years' time, subject to government funding, of course. So we'll have to wait and see how that one works forward. But I can see that putting buses at this location, and certainly if they are stopping to allow school pupils to go on and off, does create a little bit of an issue at this location. Quite happy to support the proposal as printed. Councillor Carrington.
Yes, this one is pretty well next door to my ward, to division rather, and very close to where I live. Just a bit of local knowledge for colleagues. St John's Road is really quite unusually heavily used. It is a very popular cut through and a very necessary one. And the junction with the A road at the end, which Jan showed in her graphic, can get really quite congested at busy times, and as she says, particularly during school term times. So I think, yes, there's a balance always in what we discuss in this committee, and there may be some low level of displacement. There are places for that parking to be displaced too, but I think in the interests of safety, given the level of usership of this road, this is a very good proposal. I know it has local support, and I'm very happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers? Okay, proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Carrington, that the recommendation as printed is accepted. All in favour? That is unanimous. Anybody against? Any abstentions? No, clearly carried. Finally, 4.9, Hayington, Branson Road, proposed 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. Jan, please.
Thank you. So this relates to a proposal on the road between Hayington and Branston for a proposed 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. Next slide, please. This route is currently subject to the national speed limit, and following a request for it to be reviewed, it's been assessed against the speed limit policy. An off-road cycle facility is present along this route, but there is no development, so it's been assessed as a rural limit, which looks at traffic flow and reported injury accidents. So the criteria in that respect have been met, and a mean speed of 37 miles per hour has been established. We can therefore, in accordance with the policy, promote a 40-mile-an-hour limit as shown at Appendix A. We've received one objection. The objector believes that, bearing in mind the lack of development, the national speed limit is the appropriate level of limit here, and that reducing it will increase the incidence of people trying to overtake slower vehicles and therefore possibly increase accidents. Our assessment, however, confirms that the speed limit is justified on the basis of accident rate, and that the appropriate level of limit based on the mean speed of drivers currently using the route is 40 mile an hour. It's therefore recommended that the objection is overruled so that we can introduce this limit. Thank you.
Local member, Councillor Carrington.
Thanks very much, Chairman, and thank you, Jan. I just wanted to add a few details to Jan's report, which may be helpful to colleagues. I'm not known in this committee for automatically supporting reductions of speed limits, which sometimes, as we have discussed, can seem to go a little bit far. But in this particular case, although, as the objector says, this is undeveloped land, it is open countryside, I think that there are very strong reasons for supporting this. And that really relates to the kind of use. As you've seen from the plan, at the Branston end, there is a 30 mile an hour speed limit, which has recently been extended, by the way, because there is some edge of settlement development. And then at the Hayington end, it's really a satellite of the main village. It drops back down to 40. And in the middle, we do have this section of road. There are some kinks in. It's a little bit bendier than it may have appeared on the map. It does have a footway stroke cycleway adjacent to it, and it is lit. You could therefore say, we'll leave it at 60. The reason I want to bring it down is that at the Branston end, almost immediately, you find a large secondary school, Branston Academy. That, like all the schools in our rural area, has quite a wide catchment area, and a very large minority of the children who go there come from Hayington. Now, we've recently had work done a few years ago, actually by Network Rail, to provide a tunnel under the railway embankment there, which makes it much easier for children from Hayington to use sustainable means of transport, in other words, walking or bicycles, to get to and from school for as much of the time as possible. And during term time, it is very, very heavily used. And let's remember, with a senior school, term time in the middle of winter does involve the hours of darkness. And I think it's because of that unusual usage pattern with a large number of children using that road that I'm particularly keen to see the 40 mile an hour speed limit introduced. I have discussed this with Branston Parish Council. It falls entirely within their area. It was discussed in detail by the members there, and they are in favour of it. I also talked to Hayington Parish Council about it as well. So for those reasons, I'm not trying to say we should have a blanket 40 limit or anything like that, but I do think in this case it is definitely justified, respect to the objector, but I think the safety of our children is paramount, and therefore I'm very happy to move this, Chairman.
Thank you, and I'm quite happy to second it. I know the location well. I did at one stage in my life live in Hayington and come through to Branston quite frequently along that road. I see no further speakers. Proposed by Councillor Carrington, seconded by myself. All in favour, please show now. That again is unanimous. Thank you very much. No abstentions. Nobody against. Therefore carried as printed. Okay, well, that's the final business. So I suppose I should conclude the meeting and wish you all a safe journey home. Meeting closes at 11:09.